Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where sales leaders teach you what's working for them so you can build it yourself. Feeling ready to kick your sales into high gear? We're here to help. Check out our sales coaching and consulting services at predictablerevenue.com. Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. I'm your host, Colin Stewart. Today, I'm joined by Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter, and we're going to talk about early lead development. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. We're going to have a great conversation.
We are. I've been here. We do. You have me on your nice show, and I'm happy to have you on our show. We'll throw a link to that in the show notes in case you want to listen to me speak more, but this podcast is about Mark. We're going to talk about kind of what founders need to help find that early growth, and I'm really excited to have you on the show. I'd love to hear, so many founders, you get a little magic you find product market fit, you've got something that's working, and then you're like, cool, I want to grow it. How do I go from this little bit of MRR to a bunch? I imagine you probably have dealt with some horror stories, so I'd love to start there.
Yeah, it's what I call the founder's dilemma. I could write a book on this. In fact, maybe one day I will write a book on founder's dilemma. Here's the first rule about founders is what you've created is not going to bring world peace, it's not going to solve world hunger, and it's not going to change the course of mankind. So you get early success. I get it. You get some MRR. I love it. Then you want to scale. The challenge is that you suddenly think, and this is very typical, we think we can scale ad nauseum. We can just go. And no, you really got to find out what caused that early revenue. This is what happens so oftentimes, is that early success brings on a nightmare later on. What do I mean by this? It's because we're not really breaking it down, understanding why is the customer buying from us? What is the outcome? It's not the product. It's not the product you created. It's the outcome that is created. And I got to be able to segment that tight enough to know who is it that I should be going after. Because again, it's too easy to sit there and say, I'm just going to basically spray and pray. I'm going to go anywhere and everywhere. And that is a big recipe. Now, I get it. Early on, you're not quite sure. But boy, you've got to be able to hedge your bets pretty quickly.
Oh, I love the piece there. It's not about the drill, it's about the hole, right? It's about the job to be done. If you're a founder, or when you're a founder and you're early, you can solve every problem, and I think the VC kind of approach incentivizes really big thinking, which is, I think, really important and really great. And then you get into almost the polar opposite when you go into the growth mode and the demand gen side. You can't just say, hey, I want to pursue this market. You have to say, I want to pursue this set of accounts for this reason. How do you get people to focus on just one vertical, just one set of accounts, just one set of these combinations in the first place, and why?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's hard because as a founder, you think your solution can solve anything. You really feel it can fit, a whole number of different places. This is where you got to go to. Who are my early customers, and what is the outcome? Focus in on the outcome, and then what are the attributes that drove to that outcome? What were the key questions? What were the key reasons? Why did they have this? And then what I want to do is I want to just create a circle around that block of whether it be businesses, consumers, whatever it might be, and stay absolutely laser focused there. Because here's the whole thing. You limited marketing budget, limited sales dollars. You only have so many bullets to fire. Now, I get it. You're in a race against time and early funding, and you feel like you're cash rich. And this again, too many times what happens is companies will get that round of funding, and they almost become cash rich, and they get drunk on their cash, and they begin throwing out. I'm working with a company right now that is literally cash rich, and it's like, slow down, guys, slow down, because you're going to wake up 6 months from now, 9 months from now, and realize all the cash is gone. I've seen this happen in many, many companies. Know where your focus is and stay in that focus. Now, there will be other lanes that you'll develop, but let the marketplace take you there. Don't start just throwing missiles out there and saying, oh, I want to do this trade show. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do that. No, no, no. The marketplace will take you there based on the outcomes you create, not the product you've made.
Tell me more about this.
Yeah, here's the situation. I was working with a software company recently. Great solution. And the founders all thought that their product could solve X. And it could. But you know what's interesting? It was a problem that didn't exist. They could literally solve a problem, but the problem did not exist in critical enough of a scale. So what happened was they raised funding, and the VC firms that chose to invest in them, hey, well, okay, it's their money. They can do what they want. I mean, they're taking a ride on the flyer. And that dog stopped hunting after about a year. So that's one. Another company I was working, great solution. The challenge was they were going up against very established players in the marketplace. Okay, so they've got a better solution, no doubt about it. It's kind of like if you think about Campbell's soup. Campbell's soup comes in a red can in a grocery store. I don't know if we ever go to grocery stores anymore, but Campbell's soup is kind of like, that's just like an iconic recipe. You could come out with a better soup, but people would say, if I want soup, I want Campbell's soup. It's what I've grown up. So in order to get somebody to change, and this is the difference, as a founder, you have to realize, am I coming in to change an existing category, an existing space, or am I creating a new space? Because it's completely different messaging and completely different strategies. So I'm talking here about where you're coming into an existing space. I'm coming into an existing space, and the customer sitting there saying, yeah, it's nice, but it's not worth the risk of changing. And that is a completely different scenario. Just because you're the founder and you've got this great solution doesn't mean, they're going to necessarily jump for it. Remember when the iPhone first came out? Well, let's look at EVs right now, okay? Mm-hmm. We had a pretty good run-up of EV sales, but now EV sales are tapering off. Well, okay, they're still growing, but they're not growing nearly at the pace that they were. Why? Because the early adopters have bought in, and now we're into really having to re-educate the existing marketplace. That's hard. So EV makers have to say, how do I segment against very specific groups, consumer groups, for my EVs? And that's how I'm going to eventually win over the marketplace. If I try to take on the world, i.e. like Chevy did 7 or 8 years ago, and what Ford just attempted to do a couple of years ago, it doesn't work. It does not work. I've got to go segment by segment. This is so critical for founders to understand.
Yeah, and you said another interesting thing, which was if your solution is just a little bit better, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's not going to pass. It's not going to pass muster. The prospect isn't going to be enticed enough if it's just a little bit better. What is that minimum bar for better?
Well, minimum, that is going to vary by category, by industry. I mean, am I solving a risk? Am I solving a nice to have? This company I was talking about earlier was in kind of a nice to have. So you know what? It was going to have to be leaps and bounds better than existing in order for a company to switch. And it wasn't. Now, if I'm maybe just a little bit better, but I'm in a critical space that is going to critically change the future of your company, change the future of you, then maybe I'll go ahead and take a look at it. But now, what this means is that as a seller, I may have to say, I can't come in and convert you 100%. I've got to come in with almost a trial. I've got to come in and land and expand. There's another startup company I'm working with right now, and that's exactly the strategy. The solution is better, but not significantly better. So we're coming in, and we're coming into companies, and we're saying, okay, we want you to try us at this location, in these people, et cetera, et cetera. The idea being is that we'll slowly build out. Now, here's the challenge with that. Investors don't want to hear that. Investors don't want to hear this is going to take, 3-4 years, to expand. I always say this, that from the moment a company begins, you're on the 1,000-day clock. Within 1,000 days, you've got to figure out what's the exit plan. It's not that you're necessarily going to exit, but there's something in motion after 1,000 days that you know clearly what the exit plan is. So a lot of VC firms just aren't going to buy into this, go slow, land and expand. It's a challenge. Be careful of the money you raise. It's not all equal.
Totally agree. I like the 1,000-day clock. I always think about it as like monkey bars. Every new round of funding, you're swinging to the next set. You're just swinging through the monkey bars, and you better hope that next rung is there. And sometimes it's not, and you got to stretch a little bit further, and it gets really uncomfortable, and you might not make it.
I like that picture. Yeah,
it's just funny because I'm terrible at the monkey bars.
Your childhood horror stories coming out on the playground.
I got kids now, and I was at the playground the other day, and I was like I'm strong, I work out, I could do this, and I'm like doing the monkey bars. I obviously don't climb because my grip strength was awful. Anyway, you mentioned something about EVs and how it's all about segmenting and finding that first vertical. So somebody is out there and they're trying to sell, maybe not necessarily EVs, but they've got their first product. How do you go about finding that first vertical?
Well, this comes back to really understanding and doing enough focus research, marketplace testing, and so forth by putting it out there. And again, it's not whether or not I can implement, it's not whether I can get it installed, it's not, but what is the outcome that the customer creates from it? This is absolutely key. So initially, when you're still in beta, you may put it out there with 5 or 6 different segments. That's fine. Go for it. Do it. Go for it. But you're looking for the one that sticks. Now, here's the challenge. Oh, wow, we put it out there with 5 or 6 and it didn't, it stuck with all of them. Let's go after it. No, please. Again, limited funding, limited resources. You got, you're making some bets. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're making bets. And you do hedge your bets by saying, it's not like I'm pushing all the chips into the table, into the center of the table. I'm holding some chips back in case I do need to pivot, but I'm putting enough chips on the table to be able to figure out whether or not I can make this work.
Gotcha. So you got to place the bet. I think so much of it comes down to prioritization and timing. And so how do you go about figuring out what should that first bet be?
Well, again, this comes back to what your investors expect. If you have enough time, if you're doing seed funding, friends and family, you've got a big enough Amex card, whatever, you've got more time with which to sort that out. But again, if you can't figure it out within 60 days, something's wrong. Then your product isn't really ready. It's not ready for prime time. It's not even ready for fringe time. It's just don't try to put it out there. But if you can't find your sweet spot in 60 days or less, something's wrong.
I was thinking about this conversation and this particular question this morning, and I talk to a lot of founders, and we work with a lot of founders that don't come from a sales background.
Mm-hmm.
And a question that they don't necessarily ask, but I think they are uncertain of. They do end up asking eventually is, say I run a demand gen experiment, or I run a test in this market. How do I differentiate between say I've got a customer in this market and I say, all right, I want to go and this is going to be the market I'm going to place my bet. How do I differentiate between the market didn't want it and I didn't do a good job with the demand gen channel?
Well, I'll tell you what, that is Pandora's box right there, because every founder believes they're an excellent salesperson. Every founder believes that, well, how come you can't sell that? And you're right. It can be the sales process. And what I mean, the sales process is generally messaging and positioning. Now, let me break this down. It's messaging because I'm not really conveying the right message. I'm conveying the product features versus the outcomes. It could be messaging because I'm overcomplicating things. And again, this is so typical. We go in and we spray the customer with all these things that this product can do, when all they're looking for is this little segment, this over here. The whole positioning is the fact that I'm not going in at the right level with the right company. I'm working with a company right now where the messaging that we have is really 4 distinct messages for the same company. Because depending on where we are in the company, ultimately it's going to be signed off by the C-suite. The value proposition for the C-suite is completely different than the people down on the production floor. And yet the people on the production floor are going to have to sign off on it because they're the ones that are going to live with it. Because this is the other piece you got to keep in mind. If you are coming in as a disruptive change to existing way of doing business, you're going to have basically 50% more decision makers than somebody who's already in that space has. Now, here's why. It's a change. It's a change. So I've got this higher threshold. I've got more at stake. If this doesn't work, we go down for the count. So as a result, there's going to be more players in on that decision. And again, this is something that you have to realize that the sales cycle is going to be longer many times than you ever want it to be. But it's the way it is. Because for this particular company, we have 4 different messagings that we're doing for the 4 different positionings. Because we have C-level, we have kind of the senior management, so to speak, we have mid-level, and then we have down on the production floor. And because the production floor is, hey, I'm going to lose my job. We bring this in, I'm going to lose my job, yada, yada. So guess what? We got to share them with a different message. That's hard.
It's very hard.
Yeah.
I lost deals because unions got involved. Because I used to sell welding automation tools where they looked at that and they go, hey, great that headquarters bought this $150,000 machine, but we're not going to use it because that's 8 guys' work for a month.
Right.
I was like, but you just push a button and goes, and it's a perfect butt weld. Like, you do this all the time. They're like, Matt, we'll use it.
And that's what founders many times don't realize is the intricacies of what the sales process is going to look like.
Totally. It's the classic kind of Miller-Heiman buying influences.
Oh, spot on with that. Yeah.
I remember reading Miller-Heiman, The New Strategic Selling. That was the book that was the first real sales book that I was given. I read others, of varying degrees of quality, but I remember the first time I read this, it was like that moment in the Matrix where Neo can see inside the Matrix and he's seeing like numbers and code and things like that. And I was like, oh my God. I opened the book up and it was just, my brain broke. It's like I realized I was bad at sales. Reading about buying influences, like I'd never considered that. Reading about buying modes, and a buyer could be in like even keel mode where they they don't really care to make a change. Buying mode where they're pain. What were they? They were in pain or they didn't feel the pain. All of those. It's another layer of complexity to have to consider, especially when you're trying to make that prioritization of where do we have the best path to market.
Yeah, and that's hard for founders because founders have this philosophy that, hey, I just want to race to the demo. I want to race to the demo because that's always the first. I have said in more founder meetings where they're the founder and then there's the VP of sales or CRO, CSO, whatever. And the founders always say, well, why is it taking so long to get to the demo and, get to the capabilities presentation? Hold it. Stop. That's one of the biggest problems because we have to be willing to go slow at first to go fast to close. And again, that runs counter. That doesn't just run counter to founders. It runs counter to anybody in sales. But it's because you got to shut up and listen to what the customer's saying. And then
everybody just wants to.
Yeah. And when you get to the demo, you only show them the parts that are absolutely critical to them. I see more demo presentations where they go through and you can just see the customer on the other end. Their eyes are just glazing over. And the meeting ends and the customer goes back and says, hey, wait a minute, there's a lot of other things we got to look at. We shouldn't talk to companies, yada, yada, yada. And guess what? Because you, the salesperson, you, the engineer, you, the founder, whoever, you showed them too much. And what does it cause them to do? Oh, They stop the process. Remember, the number one competitor we have is no decision. That's the number one competitor. And yet, somehow we don't get that memo.
Totally. I think if you are whipping your deck out and just doing a stock presentation for, early in the process, you're not really selling, right? At best, you're presenting. At worst, you probably should be a YouTube video or some sort of Vimeo or some, because the CEO could do a better job and could just record it. And so if it's a pre-scripted, pre-canned demo, why not just get the founder to do it? And then we can have a watch party. If that's all you're going to do and it's not going to be personalized or customized to the customer's unique situation, you may as well just send them that video because the founder can do it better.
And I'll tell you what, you can send over the popcorn, you can send over the beer, you can send over anything you want with it. It's not going to result in a sale because undoubtedly you get a founder or a CEO involved, they're going to wind up talking too much. This is what's funny. I've said the most successful demos are the ones where it's just PowerPoint slides. Now, here's why. How many times have you been part of a demo? And, okay, we're going to go online and we're going to show you how this software works and how this works. And then something doesn't work with the connection, right? Something doesn't work. Oh, man. It just creates a problem. Or the customer says, hey, let's go over here. See what's behind this button. Let's go over here. Excuse me. And all it does is create a problem. So if I do a PowerPoint, hey, to keep it really simple, I just created a few PowerPoint slides just to kind of show you. And the idea with the demo early on is to get them leaning in, say, oh, I want to know more. I don't know more. Don't feed the beast early. Make them really crave it. Because now what this does is, boy, when we get this in, this is what we're going to do, this. I always say, get the customer leaning in before you even begin to think about feeding it.
100%. You go to a nice restaurant, do they put all the food down on the table all at once? No.
Oh, right.
You start with something small, whets the appetite, you get interested. Oh, what's going to be the next course? I'm saying this like I do this all the time and don't just order Uber Eats and eat at my couch all the time, but you get the...
Well, that's where Uber Eats brings it in 4 different deliveries, right? One delivery, then 10 minutes later, another delivery.
I hope not.
But you stop and think about that because we'll see you're sitting in a nice restaurant and you're ordering and then you see the party next to you and the waitstaff comes out with some unbelievable desserts. What do you start doing? You start thinking, I got to save room for dessert. I got to have that. These are the type. You've got to be able to create a craving, create a hunger before you begin to feed the beast. And again, that runs totally counter in sales because one of the biggest problems we have in sales is we come in it with a customer service mentality. If the customer wants it, we give it to them. If the customer asks, we give it to them. Customer says, hey, let me see a demo. Let me see a demo of the product. No. Hey, you know what? I don't even know if this is really right. I'll tell you what. Well, if I show you a demo, your eyes are going to glaze over because there's so much to it. Let's spend a few minutes. Let's talk about what are the challenges you're facing. Never rush to that phase.
Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions before I show you the demo?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's spot on. I thought you were going to ask me a couple questions.
No.
I love it.
I'll say that all the time. You might have asked a couple questions. I'm like, I can show you, but I can also talk for infinity. And so let me find the 2.5 minutes that you want to hear. Let me ask a few questions first. And if you're listening and you don't do this, steal this idea from Mark. Steal these words from the two of us. That's why I'm saying these things because it can be such a huge impact, especially if you show up and you just, hey, look what I bought or look what I built. It's so easy as a founder. I've done this too. I spent 10 years in sales before I was a founder. I started my own thing. And what did I do in my first sales calls? And I'm not going to say how many because it's an embarrassingly large number. I was like, hey, look at this cool stuff I built. Isn't it great?
I've got a phrase I want everybody to write down or record. Remember, the best sales presentation ever made is the sales presentation never given. What do I mean by that? It means all the customer wants is a conversation. You know your material so well. You know it so well. This is the problem. So many salespeople have presentations, have decks and so forth because they don't know their stuff and they're not confident. What I want to be able to do is I want to be able to walk in, have a conversation with you on Zoom, Teams, whatever. No presentation, just have a conversation because it's about the questions I ask. And oh, by the way, here's another thing. And this is what actually founders get right. CEOs get right. And I remember a founder I worked with years ago was really good at this. You want to be able to walk in or online and ask the customer questions. Okay, now the typical salesperson will ask them questions that the customer can't answer, but they can answer. It's how they look smart, yada, yada. No. I want you to walk in. I want you to go online. And I want you to ask the customer questions that the customer can't answer and you can't answer. What does that do? That forces a conversation. And that's how you really begin to find out what the challenges are with a customer. Ask questions that the answer is not obvious because it's going to spark the conversation. Because remember, simple rule of selling. Before they buy anything, they got to buy you. And they got to understand, are you intelligent? Are you smart? No. Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking.
I didn't ask that of you. Come on, man. Hey, you are not going to stick around for the bonus round, man. Colin, come on.
Yeah. Sorry.
Love it. I'm normally the one that says, I don't have a problem with that because I don't know Jack's spot. So anyway.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm thinking about everybody listening to the episode going, okay, show up and have a conversation. So do we talk about our kids? Do we talk about the product? Mark said, don't talk about the product. So what do we talk about? Ask them questions that nobody can answer, but what are those questions? And help anybody who's listening kind of shape the direction of where do we want to ask questions?
Yeah. I want to ask them, where are their challenges? Where are their customers? One of the things we always want to find out is who are their customers? What are the challenges their customers are having? What are the challenges that they're having as a business? What are their objectives? Where are they going? What are their needs? What's the industry saying? What's the industry doing? And again, all you have to do is do a little bit of homework before the call, and you can gain some of this. But then all you want to do is begin getting that conversation going. Yeah, you can talk about the kids and so forth, but that gets pretty lame, and some people actually resist that. So, I'm going to throw that in a little bit, but I'm not. It's about them and their business. I had a VP of sales that I'm trying to do business with, and we've had one conversation. And I shot him another email the other day, and because he made the comment, he said, our sales team is really doing good. We're performing really well. Everybody's hitting their KPIs, etc. And he actually responded, put that in an email back to me. It's kind of like, go away. I don't want to talk with you. I wrote him back, hey, great to hear it. 2 questions for you. Do you think the KPIs are high enough? And how much more business do you think is out there? And then 2, because I did happen to find out, doing research, that there from sale to implementation is a long window. It takes a long time to implement. I said, hey, what would happen if we could find a way to reduce the length of time between sale and implementation? So those were 2 questions I shot back to him in an email. As a response, I just sent those to him this morning. And he may or may not choose to respond. That's okay. But you know what? If he doesn't within another 48 hours, I'll pop him a phone call. Probably get a voicemail. It's okay. I'll just ask him one of those 2 questions. But see, it's all about probing questions about their business. That's how we really understand where the customer's needs are.
I love that. Can I run an idea by you? Because I'm trying to put together my first book, and I know you've written a million books, and I've read a number of them. I think it was High Profit Prospecting was the first one, the yellow one, orange one, yellow one.
That's the yellow one. What's the second one?
There it is.
That's the second one right there. Yeah.
What was the first one then? Was it High Prospect or High Profit Selling?
High Profit Selling, which was all about price, and then High Profit Prospecting, and my third book, A Mind for Sales. Yeah.
Love it. All right, we'll make sure we get links to in there. It links to those in the show notes, but I want to bounce an idea off you. because I totally aligned with how I like to approach conversations. The feedback I've heard from founders is great to ask questions, but they get lost in the asking questions and they don't turn into productive conversations. And so I've been trying to segment them into 3 different steps in the conversation, which is the context questions. Tell me about your situation. I want to understand what tools you're using, help me understand kind of where you sit in the organization, your goals for the year, those kinds of things. Then the progress questions, which is like, okay, so I know you're here. Where do you want to be? What is that specific job to be done that you're looking for help with? And then the impact questions, which is if you solve that progress, if you make that progress, what is the impact that that's going to have on the organization? How do we quantify that? Does that kind of line up? Is there something that's missing?
Yes, that's absolutely. I'll give you an example. I was speaking with a VP of sales, and she did a great job of outlining the challenge. Investor owned, some couple brutal VC firms own them, and going through, and she said, "Yeah, that's our problem, all right." I said, "Okay, good." I said, "What do you think we should do to solve this?" The critical word was "we." There's this pause, and she says, "Mark, I'd love to get kind of a plan back from you." Okay. I said, "Hey, before I do that, because I know who your investors are," and she kind of laughed, and we laughed, and said, "Yeah, because I know. I mean, it's show me the money." How big of an issue do you think this is in terms of dollars? Now think about that. It's a long pause, and then she threw out a number. That was huge, huge. What did that tell me? That told me that she knows she has a problem, and she's got to solve it, and she's got to solve it pretty quickly, or she's not going to be around. What does that tell me? The door is open, Mark, to bring the solution. But you see, what was I doing? I was willing to have a conversation, get questions going over the period of several calls, and begin to allow her to articulate what the pain is. And I didn't say, "Hey, I'm going to send you a proposal." I said, "What should we do about this?" And she said, "Hey, I'd love to see a plan for you." She's now telling me, "Hey, I want what you have to offer." And it'd be easy for me to sit there and say, "Oh, great, we'll have a plan back to you within a couple of days." I said, "Hold on, let me find out the size of it." And when she threw out the number, I go, "Oh, man." You see, we have to be willing to stay in the conversation long enough to be able to uncover the magnitude of the challenge the customer has. So going back to your 3 levels of questions, spot on.
I love it. Thank you. I want to do something a little bit different from what we planned to land this episode. I have really enjoyed high profit prospecting, and I've read high profit selling a long time ago. So I can't comment on it.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to say when I read it, but it was before I had started predictable revenue. So I can't comment on it because my brain hardly remembers what I had for breakfast. But I do remember marking up in Post-it notes and Sharpie high profit prospecting. I'm hoping, seeing as we've been talking about the kind of closing process here, I'm wondering if you could sell me a mind for sales and walk me through the discovery process, kind of like we've just been doing, but ask me some questions to see if you can get me to buy a mind for sales.
Hey, Colin, tell me a little bit about the business you're in. Tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that you happen to be facing.
Well, we've got a couple account execs over here. It's largely inbound. We do some outbound. I'd say the biggest challenge is we are, a small revenue team, and most of the responsibility still falls on me, the founder.
Okay, so you're the founder. You're still doing a lot of that. That doesn't smell like it's a good use of your time because you're the creative one.
I haven't showered in a while.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so that tells me that you're overstretched over. So here would be the question: what would happen if we could take? Because you said you had 2 account execs. What would happen if we could take those 2 account execs and increase their performance by 50 or 75%? What would that do to you and your workload?
It's sound like a miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be, our people would be busier. There'd be more revenue. There'd be more profit.
Okay. What are the obstacles to achieving that?
Probably time.
Time. Okay. Is it just time? So time. Help me understand. Why is it?
No, time and resources. That's my time. We're bottlenecked at me. I'm the constraint.
Okay.
Everything's on my plate, and I only have a limited amount of time.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, is there something about the process that we need to change?
Possibly, yeah.
I'm wondering, what's the percentage of inbound deals that actually close?
Can tell you off the top of my head. It's over 20, less than 30.
Okay, so right there, fascinating. Over 20, but less than 30. Okay, here'd be a question, hypothetical. If we were just able to move that to 50, think about the time. And if you had X number of hours per week, don't have to answer it now, but think about how much more time you'd have. Now, what I'm doing is I'm running you through a series of hypothetical questions to get you focused on this. And the idea being to see that it's your people. And what I'm coming back to is I'm going to land the plane by saying it's really how your salespeople are looking at it. So let me fast forward here. I'm going to challenge that. I have a feeling, or do you sense, that your salespeople kind of predetermine just looking at the lead as to whether or not it's a good lead?
Yeah, probably.
I've found that a lot.
And you know what's interesting?
I'd be curious. Do your two account execs look at leads differently?
Oh, almost definitely.
Definitely. You know what that comes down to? It comes down to the mindset. It comes down to how they want to shape themselves. One of the things that I found in all these companies I've worked with, all these salespeople I've worked with, is that the mindset literally predetermines the results you get coming out of a conversation. And it's amazing how two people can have the same conversation. One person hears things and one person doesn't. I'm going to throw an idea out to you. Getting your people to read the book of Mind for Sales. Mm-hmm. If that just changes their ability to close deals or to not send deals to you, unless they have a higher probability of closing. If you just move the dial from 30 to 35%, would it be worth it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I'll send the books over to you.
Beautiful. Do you have any courses?
No, but I'll create one right now for you. Yeah.
Let's do it. Come on, Mark. Come on.
Actually, you know what? We actually do, but I package it in terms of bigger things. But, okay.
Thank you for playing along, by the way, just for the audience. We didn't plan that. The conversation went a different direction. I thought this would be a fun thing to promote the book.
That was excellent. That was, and for those of you listening to the home edition, this was not planned at all. But the idea is that I don't care who you are in sales. You just take the time to listen and just ask questions. And you know what's funny is I broke a lot of rules there because I asked a number of yes or no questions. But every yes or no question I asked, I came back with another question. Say, it didn't matter whether you answered yes or no. I had a follow-up question to it. See, so sometimes our brains, I can only ask open-ended questions because that's what I learned in a sales training class when I was in the third grade. I don't care.
I'm literally going on Amazon right now to buy a Mind for Sales, and I recommend everybody do the same. Buy now. Click the button. I'm also going to talk to our account execs and get them in on the process as well. Before we wrap up, and I'm going to include some links here once I finish making my own purchase. Free international shipping. Wow. There we go. I always get the hardcover. I like to throw the actual cover off and have.
Oh, I was going to say, I thought you said you like to throw the hard cover at somebody. Okay.
Yeah, I want it to do damage. If I'm going to be
dude, man, got to talk to you about your office etiquette, man.
If people are listening and they've got either salespeople, maybe they got a sales problem, maybe they're a founder and they want to, figure out how to, make some progress on something they've been stuck on. What's the best way for them? Where's the best place for them to look? Is it a book? Is it the courses? Is it to reach out to you?
Well, I mean, I put a lot of stuff out on my website. So jump out to the saleshhunter.com website. I'm all over LinkedIn. There's tons of videos. Yeah, we have courses out there. The Sales Hunter University. There is a course in there, a Mind for Sales course. We're actually coming out with a brand new book here in just a couple of weeks called The Making of a Mind for Sales. And it's a kind of a 33-day journal that people will walk through. And then there's a course behind that and so forth. But here's the whole thing. More important than this, sales is about helping people. And my objective is not to sell anything. My objective is to help people. And I think this is what everybody in sales, if you take the approach, at the end of the day, I want to look back on the day and say with confidence that I've helped people. Because my definition of sales is to help others see and achieve what they didn't think was possible. I get to do that. I've got it. I've had a good day. Yeah. And I get to come back and do it again tomorrow. That's fun. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll put links to your website, links to the book, and links to your LinkedIn in the show notes if you want to reach out to Mark. Thank you again to Mark, and thanks to everybody for listening. We'll talk to you all next week.